Welcome back, everybody. Happy November 2021. Starting the season with a bunch of writers, and I am more than happy to welcome Andrea Van Landingberg. Did I say? Oh my God, I almost said Landingberg. Landingham. I'm so sorry. Landingberg. I don't even know Landingberg.
I don't either.
But anyways, welcome to my show. I'm really super duper excited to interview you. I mean, it's like wow, we've known each other for so long. I don't even know how long. When did we first meet?
Like 10 years ago.
About 10 years ago.
Yes. It's
Yeah, wow, lots
crazy.
changed for both of us. I think the only thing that hasn't changed for me is my height. But
Oh my,
oh my gosh. Oh sheesh. But anyways, yeah, I remember meeting you. You were probably about 19 maybe.
I think I was. I was either 19 or 20. It was right when I started working at the factory, right?
Yeah, I remember. And you had like short black hair, like a bob.
Mhm.
I remember that. I remember that. I even remember going to a club with you when you turned 21.
Oh my God, yes, with my sister.
Was this Club Sinister? Yeah.
Yes, it was. It was the Bordners. Ah,
Oh my goodness, I remember that. I can't believe so much has changed. I'm so happy to have you on my show and to seeing you, geez, just your career, everything blossom like in 12 years. It's pretty incredible. It's
ah,
pretty amazing. Thanks so
thank,
much for taking the chance to be on my show here.
thank you so much. And I'm so proud of you too. Look at everything you have been doing. I mean, your podcast is amazing.
We proud of each other.
Yes,
We
we
just spread the
are.
love and keep going.
That's right.
So your book, it's coming out on November 1st, which is this week. And it's called Hollywood Horrors, Murders, Scandals, and Cover-Ups from Tinseltown.
Yes,
And it's going to be available at all bookstores, correct?
right. Pretty
Which is
much everywhere.
Amazon. Yeah, anywhere. We're at.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Powell's. I just found out the last bookstore in LA is going to be carrying it as well. God, I'm forgetting other ones, but yeah, it's gonna be almost everywhere.
This is so amazing. And the crazy thing is that we're both releasing books the same month.
I
And it's kind of
know.
like, I believe that like the higher sources, the higher beings or whatever, puts people in your like life path for a reason. It's like somehow who would have known 12 years ago that 12 years later, you and I would kind of be in the same place and like talking about the same stuff. It's just really incredible. It's like it was all meant to be, I feel at least.
Yes, I agree. And this is your first book too, as well, right?
I mean, well, I had to complete a dissertation, which is a book for my doctorate, but and it still had to be copywritten and everything. But this was on my own will, like because that was to complete a degree. Like, oh man, I gotta? Yeah, I gotta. But this is like I wanna. So there was a kind of a different feeling to it. Is that how you felt with your book?
Totally. It was a lot of I wanna. I'm not gonna lie, there were times when it felt like I gotta, but you
Yeah.
got, it was it's a challenging thing, you don't really realize until you get
Yeah.
into it.
What got you to write a book about Hollywood horrors, murders, scandals, and cover-ups? And White Tinseltown.
Oh my gosh. Well, I've always loved Hollywood and Hollywood history and old movies ever since I was a kid. I was that weird kid who was buying VHS tapes at a movie. You know?
Old black and white movies.
Yes, classics. I love
My
that
mom's
stuff.
always watching them.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So for me, it started with that, and I wanted to learn about the stars and their lives and basically how crazy the studio system was and what the reality was of Hollywood versus what, was being put out in the fan magazines and what everybody thought it was. It was nuts. So I just got really into it from there.
And is this the Hollywood, the golden era? Is that the Hollywood the age that you're talking about?
Yes, this book focuses on, yeah, on the golden era from 20s through 50s with a little bit of backstory from before the 20s, of course.
And I imagine that I have no idea. I'm just making this up in my head, but if I were to create a book like this, I mean, and it had to do with murders and stuff. I imagine that you talk about big stars too, like icons like Marilyn Monroe and stuff like that.
100%. So Marilyn Monroe unfortunately does not make an appearance in this book. I want her to be
Oh
in my
wow.
part two because part
Oh
two is
wow.
going to be 60s on. So her death, I mean, that's huge, 1962. So it's a little sneak peek for that. But yes, I have Lana Turner. I have, the Fatty Arbuckle case. I have Elizabeth Taylor and other really notable cases of that era.
And when you say Hollywood horrors, murders, scandals, you mean scandals like affairs as well, or type thing? Yeah. Could
Mhm.
you are you able to give us a snippet, a little bit about some of these scandals, or is this something we have to wait for?
Oh my gosh, no, I'm happy to share. So as far as affairs, the scandals, the most scandalous one I just mentioned, Elizabeth Taylor. She's actually my last story in the book because I took it really chronologically. So in 1959, at the end of the golden era, she found herself in some pretty hot water when Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher split up because of Elizabeth Taylor. So that was quite a scandal back then because, as you can imagine, in the 50s, they were all about, family values and you don't
Right.
take someone's husband, quote unquote. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's for sure one of the scandals.
What about the Kennedys? Do you mention anything about the Kennedys?
Oh my God, you're taking me right into part two. Yeah. Oh my God, that would for sure be.
I'm not talking about the golden era. I'm sorry. I'm starting to jump. So yeah, let's stick to the golden era. I'm just thinking about scandals that I'm fascinated with. So let's get back to you because I'm just getting all fascinated with all this Hollywood drama. So the 20s. So what about tell us more. Take
Yeah.
us from the 20s. What happens in the 20s?
Oh my gosh, the 20s. I mean, really started it all, and uh, gosh, once the studios were making a lot of money and realizing how much they had at stake and how much they had to lose, they started really tightening up the publicity realm of it. So as stars started to misbehave, the studios responded by creating, publicity departments and entire roles that had just the responsibility of keeping these things under wraps and establishing relationships with the LAPD and with the press to make sure that only good information came out about these stars.
Oh
So
wow.
that was pretty much in response to three really high profile cases all happening in a row in the very early 20s that made the studio moguls realize, like, okay, we have to reel in a lot of this stuff because the public's getting mad and they're not going to come see our movies anymore.
I've been obsessed with Charlie Chaplin my whole life, and to this day I think of him like if I knew him, like I'll reminisce. And I'm like, why do I think about Charlie Chaplin? But I know that there's a lot of scandals that happened back then too, right? It's not just like I mean, are you able to reveal anything about that?
Ooh, so Chaplin is in the book. He is in one of the first chapters that I write. I didn't cover his personal trials and tribulations. Oh, he had many. And interestingly enough, the lawyer that helped him get out of his, trials and tribulations at the time is Jerry Giesler. And Jerry Giesler was the Hollywood lawyer. He's in about five of my stories because he helped
Wow.
everybody get out of everything. If you had the money, you could get away with anything.
Wow, wow, Hollywood.
Hollywood.
And what about the 30s? So we're looking at, do you talk about prohibition and how that affected Hollywood as well?
Yes, I do. So it's interesting because Prohibition was in the 30s, and that was a time when a lot of these, groups were very interested in keeping a very pure image of America. So the films wanted to, well, they didn't want to, but the films were kind of forced to keep up with that image. And
Wow,
it's
that's a lot of pressure.
it is a lot of pressure. And it's interesting that the same groups really that kind of enforced prohibition were pretty much the same ones that made Hollywood create a whole, Hays Code to keep Hollywood looking straight and narrow. And so then the movies had to reflect that. It's wild. It was these
And
really
I can imagine that's when most of the crime started.
well, the crimes had already been there. It's pretty much since the early 20s, even before then. Honestly, since all the creatives spilled into Hollywood, things, went pretty awry pretty fast. And
Really?
but as far as the 30s, they really wanted to control what was shown in the movies. So it kind of becomes that question, like, is Hollywood showing the reality of what's going on, or are they perpetuating these bad things by showing it on the screen? So it was kind of, they ended up just having to clean up house and create all kinds of censorship in their films as a response.
So that's why we have censorships now.
Well, yes, it's part of the reason that now we have a rating system because
Oh
before
wow.
that, in the old Hollywood era, every film had to be suitable for every audience member. So every movie had to be family friendly. Every movie had to, make
Yeah,
sure.
that's why the wives and the husbands slept in separate beds and there was no making out scenes and can't
Exactly.
show breasts.
Right, right. All these little rules that seem pretty insignificant, like, oh, if a woman and a man are laying down on the bed, one foot has to be on the floor. You can't be fully laying down. The 1 foot rule was that
Wow.
foot has to be on the floor because that makes it appropriate.
That's interesting.
Little things like that. Yeah, it was pretty wild. So once that started to fall apart later on in the 60s, which again gets into part two, that's when they created the rating system that we have today, which is now okay. Not every movie has to be family friendly. We can create movies for grown-ups. We just have them rated out now.
Yeah, wow, this is really incredible. So tell us more about some of the murders that you talk about. Some the famous murders or the hidden murders that have never been solved or a little bit of both.
A little bit of both. The most famous, I think, that I can think of that is in my book is, of course, the murder of Elizabeth Short, aka the Black Dahlia,
The
in
Black Dahlia? Yeah.
1947. That for me really kind of started it all. And as far as these old Hollywood crimes, it's such a fascinating one too because it's never been solved. I don't know that it ever will be, given now that it's almost a century later. And what information is there new to find out?
I've been
It's
to that house 'cause one of my buddies was the curator there and I used to like I mean, I'd walk around and stuff, and supposedly the bathroom where she was murdered, and I didn't feel anything there. Like, I feel that I can be sensitive to certain areas of history where I feel like maybe sometimes it gets hotter or colder in areas, or there's just more, the air is thicker, the fog,
yeah.
or however you want to describe it. And I didn't get, yeah, pressure. I didn't get anything like that there. Yeah, so not, I mean, but who knows? After all these years, it could have been blessed, it could have been purified, all kinds of stuff could have happened. I mean, and it probably doesn't even look like the way it did back then because it's been remodeled and stuff. So, I mean, but I just didn't get that feeling there. So I'm
Wow.
not, it almost makes me think that it didn't happen in that house.
Oh my
Yeah,
God. That's
yeah,
amazing that you were able to get into that house. The Souden house is iconic.
yeah, cool, huh? That was cool. Yeah, I didn't even
Jealous.
know about it
I
till my
wanted to.
buddy's like, ever heard of Black Dahlia? I'm like, no. And then I started looking and went online. I was like, what in the world? And he goes, yeah, supposedly she was murdered. I was like, what? I didn't, yeah, I didn't get the feelings there. I didn't get those feels.
Trip out. I've been wanting to get in there. I looked into having my book launch there because
Oh,
just
really? Wow.
yes, yes. It's gonna have to come at a later time.
Sure. Oh my goodness. And so, what other famous murder case back then? Do you talk about? Tell us.
Okay, well, another famous death is
Do
for
you talk about the Cecil B. Hotel?
okay, so the Cecil gets mentioned. It doesn't have a whole own, story to it,
Yeah.
but it does get a mention in the book for sure. But as far as famous, deaths that may or may not have been murder, I think it was a murder. Since we were talking about the 30s, Jean Harlow had,
Wow.
about this? She had her second husband was found killed in their house in Benedict Canyon. And it's still another one that's just, we don't really know. But what we do know is that MGM, one of the most powerful studios in the world at that time, and certainly probably now, got in there and fixed up the crime scene because they were the ones who were most known for being, family friendly, and they had a very powerful publicity department that was able to get in and clean things up. Friends with the LAPD. Who knows what actually happened? Well, you know,
Yeah.
it's pretty crazy. They wrote it up as though it was a suicide, but it certainly looks as though there was a murder and a third party that was not Jean Harlow in the picture. So
I'm gonna have to read up on that. Wow.
yeah, Paul Byrne. Paul Byrne. And you know what else is crazy? That house is still there, but who ended up buying that house later on in the 60s was Jay Sebring, the boyfriend of Sharon Tate, who was killed in the Manson murders in the late 60s. That was his house later on.
Maybe that house is tainted.
Seems crazy, right?
Yeah.
It's like a doctor and who owns it, and they've had it pretty. I think they bought it after the J.C. Bring situation, and I don't think they said they have never experienced anything in that house.
Could you buy a house where you knew like a murder happened?
Me personally,
Yeah.
I don't know. A murder, like that's a stain. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
right, right. It is a stain.
Yeah. What about you? Would you?
I don't think so. And it's interesting because who knows what's happened in the behind the walls where we currently live, you know? And we really don't know what we're dealing with.
I know.
And so I mean, but I mean, I have good vibes in this place, so I don't think it's happened, but we really don't know. It's so funny because Fredo, of course, you know Fredo.
Yes.
So there's this taco place here in Pasadena called Guisados, and they have the best mole tacos of all time. Let me tell you, if you haven't had it, we're gonna
Bomb.
have them.
Bomb.
Yeah, you've had them. Bomb ass mole tacos
Yeah.
represent Guisados in Pasadena. But anyways, I recently found out because Fredo told me, he goes, yeah, that one place he loved those tacos. Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, that someone was murdered there. I was like, what? Cause yeah, I know.
What?
I don't know how long ago or when, but if you remember, right there in that corner, it was closed for a long time. That restaurant,
Okay.
there was vacant for years, and then all of a sudden, Guisados pops up. So who knows? Maybe they had to do some cleaning up, you know, like some spiritual cleansing and stuff. But man, yeah, some good ass tacos coming from Guisados. At least I know that.
Wow, that's a trip.
Yeah, that is a trip. It'd be a trip if you were to investigate some of the stuff that happened in Pasadena, since it's also such an old town, just like old Hollywood is. And it
Mhm.
actually merged at the same time when old Hollywood did. That was part of the reason why they built the 110 freeway.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
And that
So
used to be, I mean, obviously since before there were cars. So now looking at how windy and treacherous that road can get if you're speeding along in a car, that used to just be, a little Model T cruising down at like
it
40 miles
sure
per hour.
was. How freaking amazing, right?
I know. I
That's
always
so.
think about
I wish there was a time machine. I want to go back and just see it all in its prime when it just started blossoming.
me too. Oh my gosh, downtown LA in the 20s, take me there now. And
For
Hollywood.
I know that's where I want to be. Maybe that's where we've been. And
I'm
what
sure.
about, do you mention at all, and I think this is also the 2030s, the whole Randolph, yeah, the papers and stuff. Yeah, Randolph William Hearst. Do you talk about the Hearst? Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That is
Because there
crazy.
was a lot of scandals there.
Yeah, he was a scandalous man. His whole life was.
Scandalous. Yeah. Yeah, scandalous and wow, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So many weird secrets and stories in that family. Yeah, the whole story with Thomas Ince mysteriously dying after being on his boat, and then the stories that they
I don't
came.
know about that.
Oh, okay.
What is that in your hand? Oh yeah! There it is. Everybody look at Hollywood horrors. Yeah, 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 yeah.
The
Oh
book.
man, I can't wait to get my copy.
Oh my god, I can't wait. Okay, so Thomas Ince was a really, really prolific producer director in the 20s. This is another 20s story. This was 1924. And he was celebrating his birthday actually right around this time. This would be our like close to the anniversary.
Oh man, we're channeling it. We're channeling it.
Yeah, yeah. So he passed away, and there were very conflicting stories, shall we say, about what happened to him on the yacht. It was on William Randolph Hearst's yacht. That's hard to say. And it was right off the coast near. They took off from San Pedro and went down to San Diego, and they were just partying on the yacht. And next thing you know, Thomas Ince is dead. And the stories that come out, Hearst has all these papers. They put
Oh
out these
man.
stories that are very kind of misleading, saying like, "Oh, he died over there. Look over there." It was, but the more stories that came out, it seemed weirder and weirder. Like, why did you lie about that? If you have nothing to hide, then why are you publishing stories that don't even make sense? Charlie Chaplin's in that story. He was on board.
Ooh.
He was there.
Yikes.
It's crazy. It's
Yikes.
crazy. It's really nuts. That story I really like as well, because just there are many conspiracy theories saying, William Randolph Hearst shot him and, killed him by accident, thinking that he was aiming for Charlie Chaplin. And others say, no, no, he was just hit with really bad indigestion. He suffered from health problems, and that was what really killed him. But it was just the circumstances that happened after that made it seem really, really strange.
Why did they even have a spiff? Do you know about that?
So I do know that, okay, so Marion Davies, right? Hearst's uh,
No.
longtime mistress. So Hearst had a mistress for like 27, almost 30 years named Marion Davies. And he really fostered her acting career, really, helped her along and made her who she was. And legend has it that Marion Davies had a little thing with Charlie Chaplin, who was, closer to her age, really great in bed, super
And
famous.
and Chaplin was a womanizer, so I wouldn't doubt that part.
100%. Yeah. And they were seen together out. In fact, that story, okay, they were seen out together right here near my house, near Hollywood and Highland. And they were seen, and basically, the 1920s equivalent of TMZ posted. Okay, so TMZ posted that they were out together. Yeah, so they were seen together, and that story made the paper that day, that they were on the yacht. So it seems a little strange, So that's kind of the prevailing legend, is that Hearst was aiming at Chaplin, and in the dark, under the dock, or under the decks rather, on the boat, that he missed and hit Ince instead, because he wouldn't have meant to kill Ince. He and Ince had business negotiations that they were working out to help Marion's career, and there was no reason to have killed Ince. If he did, it would have been an accident for sure.
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine Hearst being on in all kinds of scandals. I mean, just having the power that he had
Yeah,
and being able to be in control of tabloids. Like,
yeah.
man, what, first of all, I would never want that responsibility.
No.
And it's like, man, it's like, wow. And second, that's just pretty, that's the golden era back then for sure.
Yeah.
It was beautiful and just so much was happening all at once. Like, it was just like this explosion of evolution in for everybody, for the whole world actually.
Yes, all this
Hollywood, yeah,
creativity and energy, and all compacted in such a, couple square miles. It's pretty wild, really.
it is pretty wild. So, I have a question. What do you wish you would have known before you started the whole writing this book process?
Ooh, that's a good.
So, the first thing I get is that because you said it, that you love Hollywood, old Hollywood. Okay,
Hmm.
so you took your passions. Okay, I love old Hollywood, and then you just thought I want to do something with my passions about old Hollywood.
Hmm.
How did it happen?
Wow. Well, it happened thanks to a class that I took in college, a writing class about finding and telling LA stories. And thankfully, the professor of that time really believed in me and liked my stories. All the stories, of course, that I picked were of that era about old Hollywood scandals, LA stories. And he actually recommended me for this because the publisher was looking for someone for this project. And thank goodness he sent them my contact info. So it was pretty unexpected how it happened, and I still can't believe it to this day. It's just the most amazing thing. But what I wish I had known,
Yes.
what I really wish I had known before all this, is to not doubt myself. And that's what I really want everyone to take on for themselves. Like, don't doubt yourself. Don't dim your light. Don't make yourself small. Don't just follow your passion, even if it doesn't seem to make sense to other people, even if you're the only one who believes in it. Just follow that passion, because it's in there for a reason. And if you have something that you want to share, you have to share it.
Did you have a doubt in the beginning?
Oh yeah.
And what were your what were your doubts? Like, what were you thinking?
I mean, I didn't think it was going to go anywhere. I didn't think, first of all, I didn't think I was going to get the deal. I mean, I had doubts all the way through the process, to be honest. Even before, when I was starting to kind of come out a little more as, being a little a little baby Hollywood historian when I was in college. I mean, yeah, there were times when I thought this is dumb. Like no none of my friends understand this. Nobody gets it. I feel stupid. I feel this, I feel that. That was just all kinds of noise, you know.
Yeah, extra noise in your head. Yeah, that you're right. That self-doubt is extra noise in your head.
Exactly.
So how
So
did you get that extra noise out? How did you start focusing, and when and how did something just spark? And I almost said, what lit your ass up? What lit your ass up? And you're like,
what
I'm going full force.
what lit my ass up? Well, I just had to push through it. I feel like for that, the only way out is really through. And there's no amount of convincing yourself that's really gonna get you out of that without action. So I just decided, you know what? I got to have faith in this. I have to pursue it. There's a reason that I feel this way, and it's kind of my responsibility to push through and just do it. And the more I did it, the more started happening, the more, I started getting positive results from what I was doing, and I was growing and seeing that. And so it started to become, those fears started to recede.
Hmm.
And I'm that's honestly that's I think that's going to be a lifelong pursuit for, as you know, for creative people. Like that's just, sadly, that's kind of a thing that we have to deal with
It
sometimes.
is a thing that we have to deal with sometimes, but once we start climbing, we can't look down.
That's it. That's it.
Keep on climbing.
Uh-huh.
And
Yes.
then and so when at what point were you like, you know what, I'm gonna have a part two to this book? Was it when you physically had your current book with you and you're like, I got this, I'm already ready, or were you already thinking ahead while you were writing that one?
I already knew that I was going to do a part 2. I already knew.
Nice.
Even while I was still writing, I mean, when I was first drafting these proposals to even try to get this deal, I had a lot of stories that I had to kind of cull down into the table of contents that I have now. And there are so many more stories that didn't
Yeah.
fit in here because I was focusing on 20s or 50s. But oh my gosh, the 60s? What a time. The 70s. And the more I got into, hey, love that shirt, by the way. So sick. Oh, love it. We're such a stylish bunch.
Thanks. I love the 60s and 70s.
Me too.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I think after the six. So okay, so what are the next 3 decades you're gonna do?
So next I want to do, of course, 60s, 70s, 80s, and probably 90s. I mean, if 90s has been one that I've kind of been tossing back and forth, like for sure 60s, 70s, 80s, maybe 90s if I find enough stories. There's one obviously that I know would go well, but if I find more, then yeah, I'll put in the 90s.
So why do you think it's important for our society or our culture or the world to know about these stories?
I think it's important because even today there seems to be a disconnect between what's really going on in the media and what the public perceives. And
Yeah, it's still happening.
it's still happening. Maybe not to the extent that it was back then, but
I
in
don't
ways,
know. It could be worse, and we just don't know about it.
that's what I'm saying. In ways, it 100% still is.
Yeah.
There's for sure. I mean, public figures now, we're seeing this, especially in the last 10 years, public figures that are so respected and so well known that we're finding out later, like, oh no, oh, with the whole Me Too movement and all of these things that we're finding out now, thanks to, social media and conversations that are being had that have never been had before. I think it's important to really know where that started and where that all came from, and really what's at stake for Hollywood, why they have reasons to hide the things that they have hidden in the past. And I think it
Yeah.
just gives you a little window into what is still going on now.
And what category is your book in? Because I'm thinking documentaries, I'm thinking history, I'm thinking murder, I'm thinking all kinds of categories. So what categories is your book in?
Yeah, so it's technically listed under true crime. I wrote it narrative nonfiction, so it's everything that happened is, pretty well fact checked. When there is, what should I say, when there's debate as to what happened,
Hmm.
I try to present, as objectively as I can, the different sides so that the reader can kind of look into it and think, well, here's what I think happened. I don't try to tell people what I think happened, even though I for sure have thoughts.
Yeah.
So yes, it's definitely historical nonfiction true crime.
And since you are in LA and you wrote a book about the history of things that occurred in LA, crime police speaking or with horrors and stuff, did you travel to any of these places as you were writing the book, investigating?
I did. I did.
Yeah, whoa, that's great.
It was so much fun. I mean, if anything, just for
Did it kind of put things into different perspective and help you be more creative with your writing?
it did. It did because I just wanted to go and see, what did the vegetation look like? Which direction does this house face? Where's the sun rising and setting? What's the I wanted to feel it as much as possible so that I could put that into my writing and make it as real and as accurate as possible. So yeah, I went to the house of Elizabeth Taylor where she was when she found out that her husband had died. I went to of course, the Sowden House, not inside, but I went to the Sowden House and did the drive to 39th and Norton to see how easy that drive would have been. Turns out, real easy. It's a pretty straight shot.
Wow.
Yeah, things like that. That if I wanted to really make it come alive, it was really easy to just get out and do that. Especially in the pandemic, there was no traffic.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That was the best thing about the pandemic. No traffic. The LA was so beautiful. I remember thinking that being in traffic and I remember driving in LA during the pandemic and I was like, no traffic. LA has never looked so beautiful. It
Yeah,
looks so gorgeous. Yeah. And I'm an LA native. Are you an LA native?
I am. Yeah, I'm from the San Gabriel
Los
Valley.
Angeles. Yeah. Everybody, this has been an incredible interview with Andrea Landingham. Thank you so Van Landingham. Thank you so much for being on my show, A Little Less Fear podcast. I can't wait to go to your book release party and to get my copy. And I look forward to interviewing when you're done with your book, your next book. That would be
Thank
awesome.
you. Thank you
And I'd
so
love
much
to
for
have you back anytime. Anytime you want to be back on my show, let me know if you want to discuss something, and maybe we can talk about a specific crime from the past, Hollywood or whatever. I'm more than happy to do an episode, whatever you'd like to share. So it was very, very nice having you. Thank you so much, Andrea.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Anything else you'd like to share? How can we find you on social media?
Oh my gosh, Instagram. I am currently reworking the entire thing. I've been saying that for years. I just need to get on it. Instagram is Andrea Van L, and I can also be found on. I'm not great at social media, so
That's fine. Okay, there we go. On Instagram is fine with me. Thank you so much, Andrea, and I'll talk to you soon. I'll see you soon.
thank you. I'll see you soon.
Have a great day. Love you. Thank you. Bye.